Hello and welcome back to all of you rare beauties. Today we are getting into our clairability series where I'm going to discuss the four heavy hitters of the clairabilities and get into details of how you can tap into them and just how you can discover which ones are strongest within yourself as well. And the four we will be discussing in this series are clairvoyance, which is psychic seeing, claircognizance, which is psychic knowing, clairaudience, which is psychic hearing, and clairsentience, which is psychic feeling. And in this video today, we'll be discussing clairvoyance. When it comes to all of the clairs, clairvoyance seems to be the one that is most well known. And I think that's mostly due to the mysticism that is painted over this clairability in pop culture. And I'd argue that this clairability in pop culture is the reason that a lot of people think these extraordinary clairabilities, these senses that we can tap into, are unavailable to the layman. Now, I won't go all the way into how I think this was orchestrated to make us believe that these abilities are inaccessible in order to keep us from reaching our full power and potential in this lifetime. But what I will tell you is what you think you know about clairvoyance specifically is most likely a lie, and you're really able to tap into this extraordinary sense from the comfort of your own home if you learn how to do so. Now, in its simplest terms, clairvoyance is the ability to conjure up an image or a vision in your mind of a certain article or person or scene or whatever it is you're attempting to bring forth. Psychic dreaming also falls under the category of clairvoyance. So if you are somebody, if since childhood or more recently, you fall asleep and have a dream of something that ends up happening later on, that is a type of clairvoyance that you are tapping into unconsciously. And again, all of the clairs, but especially clairvoyance, is not as mystical and inaccessible as the media wants you to think it is. And of course, the way you tap into this clair won't be the same as how anybody else taps into it. There really is a spectrum when it comes to these abilities, where some people will see a very clear vision with detail and color and texture, where other people will only really conjure the idea of what it is they're trying to bring up through their clairvoyance. But no matter what it is, both are extremely valid and they're supposed to work with what resonates with you and your frequency. And to go along with that, just because somebody has extremely crystal clear vision doesn't mean that they have the ability to decipher exactly what that vision actually means in their waking life. And oftentimes, people with the clearest vision will still need context clues from either their other clairs or something out in their external environment to help them decipher what it is that message is trying to conduct. For example, say out of nowhere, somebody gets a vision of a little red wagon. It's not that the wagon itself is actually the message that's trying to be delivered, but instead it might be something that conjures up a feeling from your childhood or a specific moment in your life where you have a memory of that red wagon. And going back to that memory in your psyche and what you were feeling at that time and who was surrounding you, the message lies in the context, not just in the vision itself. And of course, sometimes the message itself isn't even meant for you. Because again, everybody has different accessibility to the different clairs. So your clairvoyance might be stronger than your clairsentience, for example. And sometimes, if you have strong clairvoyance, you can get messages that are actually meant to be delivered to your loved ones or to a stranger on the street. And that's why I always encourage, despite how society views it, I always encourage people to share these visions openly, especially if they come through really spontaneously when you're out with other people surrounding you. And I'll use an example from my real life as well. A couple weeks ago, I randomly had a dream where the job I had at the time, I was sitting there on a Zoom call and my whole company was on the Zoom call and they said, "Hey, we actually had a new CEO. They bought out the company. So we're using this Zoom call to introduce her to everyone." And on the screen comes one of my best friends from childhood. And I was like, "Oh, that's so cool. She's our new CEO." And of course, I wake up later and I was like, "That dream wasn't meant for me." And I tell my friend about that dream. And she tells me that the day before, she had been talking with one of her other friends and saying how her dream job is to be the CEO of some company. So it's almost like that dream came to me, and I had the urge to speak about that dream to my friend that was in it to let her know that her dreams are accessible, they're tangible, and she can actually make it happen. And as I mentioned before, you may be able to tap into all of the clairs equally with just as much power in your cognizance as you have with your voyance, as you have with your sentience, as you have with your audience. But for most people, one or two are usually stronger than the other ones, and you're leaning more towards tapping into the ones that are stronger and using the other ones as kind of a backup to help bridge that context that is needed for the messages that come through. And going along with that, you may have two or three that are really strong, and one you're just not able to tap into at all. And usually that's because your soul has a contract that decided it might be too much or too overstimulating or too traumatic for you to tap into a certain clair in this lifetime. And that may be because in previous lifetimes you were able to tap into these abilities and it got you in trouble or maybe even killed in some instances. So that's why your soul agreed, I don't want to tap into that because it's going to open this can of worms of unprocessed trauma from my past that might not serve me in this lifetime. And this may only be for a small percentage of you as well. So if you have a clair that's not as developed as you'd like it to be, but you do feel curious and want to develop that skill even further, that's your soul's calling to play around with it more and be experimental rather than just having to avoid it and ignore it altogether. And now the fun part is talking about how we can tap into those clairs. And so, with any of the clairs that I discuss, the first thing I will say is to tap into meditations and solfeggio frequencies. I personally love working with theta waves because it helps me tap into that unconscious flow of energy, and that unconscious mind is able to come forward and deliver the messages that wants to come through those frequencies. But of course, use your own discretion. And if you like aligning with different types of music or different types of frequencies, you have that option as well. And so once you do have that meditation loaded up and you're ready to go, close your eyes and just start practicing. I'm sure many of you have seen that figure where it has different levels of how clearly you can conjure an apple in your mind. And for some, it's absolutely nothing. For others, again, it's that bright red color. And then, of course, you have all of the other options in between where it's slightly faded, but kind of there as an outline, or mostly there, but a little bit blurry with the colors. It's a spectrum of what you can tap into. But as you're closing down your eyes, really just think of any object, any person, any animal that comes through and try your best to picture that. Imagine that they're standing right in front of you and write down your progress. If you notice that slowly over time you start to see from an outline and then you start to see color and then it goes on from there, write that down because our unconscious brain loves results. It loves seeing tangible things in front of us. And of course, write down how it comes through for you as well, because as I said before, clairvoyance is a spectrum, and you might be able to tap into the idea of something coming to mind rather than the actual picture of it. But if you're still able to see that context in your brain and understand it, that is that clairvoyance trying to come through. If you're somebody that leans more into that psychic dreaming aspect of clairvoyance, start writing down your dreams more often. And not only that, go back to them when something in your dreams happens in real life. Again, our unconscious brain adores seeing the results of its progress. So keep notes and be diligent about your notes as well. Be as detailed as possible. The biggest advice I can offer is if you are trying to tap into your clairs, simple act of bringing awareness to the ability in you is what helps to spark that within you. The clairs love the acknowledgement. These are extraordinary access to our senses that we are able to bring about and use for the benefit of ourselves and our loved ones. And it all starts with that first step of bringing awareness to the reality that you have the ability to do it as well. And it's not as mystified as our capitalistic Western society wants us to believe it is. And as you're venturing into these realms of the clairs, really trust yourself. Trust your intuition that what is coming forth and being conjured in front of you is the message that you need to receive or will lead you to the message that you need to receive. Your mindset when working with these clairs is going to be paramount to awakening those abilities within you. So go forth on this venture with an open mind and a true belief that you are able to bring about this magic into your own lifetime, and it starts from within. And that was a brief outline on clairvoyance and the different things you can do to awaken this ability within you. And this video is the first in a 4-part series, so in my next video I will put out in a couple days, that's going to go into clairsentience, and then another for clairaudience, and then another for claircognizance after that. If you guys made it to the end, thank you for sticking with me. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.